Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conscious Conversion. I'm so happy and grateful that you are listening today because today I have an amazing friend and colleague and coach on the show. And his name is Marc Cordon. And we have known each other for, a year now? Better part of a year?
I think it's been about a year.
And he kicks ass. I'm excited to introduce you to him if you don't already know him. He's an NPH, Master's in Public Health. He's a positive psychology coach, co-founder of the Joy Revolution, which I have been a part of, and it's amazing. Author of the book, Beyond Resilient, The Coach's Guide to Ecstatic Growth. He specializes in transitions, leadership, performance, and well-being, helping people break through to the next level to find greater enjoyment and purpose in their lives. He focuses on misfit entrepreneurs, and leaders who march to the beat of their own drum. Marc's coaching empowers people to claim their own joy as they make a difference for others. He's appeared on national television, radio shows, and has delivered 2 TEDx talks on positive psychology and social justice, and they're kick-ass. I've watched them both. I'm honored to have you on the show, Marc. Thank you.
Sarah, it's awesome to be here. Thank you. And congratulations on the launch of your podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for being...
I could stare at that cover for hours now. That beautiful cover.
Yay, graphic designers. Thank you so much. And photographers.
Yeah.
And all the people. Thank you so much. I'm glad you like it. Are you ready to dive into some questions?
I'm ready to dive. I'm
okay,
in
let's
the
dive.
deep end, head first.
This is going to be so fun.
Let's do this.
What kind of impact do you want to make in the next 5 years in this world?
Oh, wow. You're going right for the jugular.
Right for the, that's how I roll, man.
Yeah. When I think about impact, I think about impact from the standpoint of disruption. And I think about when it comes to disruption, so many of us have fallen into patterns, both conscious and unconscious patterns that have sort of relegated us to living in a life in which we feel like we're living in this box, and then the unconscious every now and then goes, well, there's something more to life than this, right? It's very much what Abraham Maslow said, what one think they can be, they must be. And so in a lot of ways, the coaching that I do or the talks that I give are very much around the lines of conscious disruption. And what can you do to disrupt those patterns that we've been indoctrinated with since we were little, to really expand and really impact the greater good for the better. I think that's what I want to do in the next hour, the next year, the next 5 years. It's 2020, so probably
the rest of our lives.
The rest of our lives. So go and ask me on the 10th anniversary of your podcast, and it will probably be the same thing, Sarah. It will probably be the same thing. I know that purpose expands and changes. My purpose has been the same for about 20 years now. It's one in which I want to have as much fun as possible while empowering and disrupting as many people as possible. And for the longest time, it was either through music or then it was through education. And now
activism,
it's activism. And now it's really through coaching and the programs that we do with the Joy Revolution. So
I should have prefaced this conversation, y'all, with Marc is deep as fuck and so smart. I mean, brilliant. And I love that. I love what you just said. I love the idea of conscious disruption and joyful disruption and kind disruption.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something that even when I was younger, and you know this, Sarah, I was that angry Asian disruptor, right? Yeah. And in order to get my point across, I needed to show someone that they were wrong. It was an us versus them mentality. And when you did the Joy Revolution about a year ago, the field of joy as social contagiousness, a thing that can be used contagiously, was just expanding. And now it's an official field, right? It's people actually look at social contagiousness. You want to look at that from the standpoint of a marketer, that's super cool. Or you want to look at that from the standpoint of someone who's leading a movement, to me, it's the same damn thing. It's about the fact that one individual has the power to affect a whole bunch of other people, and those people have the power to affect the individual. It's amazing. And I think that's why we all kind of chose these meat suits to do it as a collective unconscious, to do it as a collective, to do it as what Hawaiians call the hui, the group, the family, you know. And I don't think this work is meant to be done alone. You know, I think that there's a couple people who can go to the top of a mountain and fucking vibrate and stuff like that. But like for the most part, as we raise our consciousness, I feel like it's our responsibility to come back and bring that consciousness to other communities, maybe communities who didn't see opportunities and options because they were called the group of misfits, you know, and they've been deemed that, and they believe that, and they don't.
You're like, it's like the hero's journey, and you're like the hero, like you're describing that hero's journey of like going, you know, finding the golden chalice and bringing it back, bringing it back.
You know, I don't necessarily think of it as hero's work, but you know, when you overlay the Campbell sort of the what is it called, the trajectory of the hero, each of us has a responsibility to kind of figure out what within is what we know we can be, access that, and whether you like it or not, once you access that, you're forever changed. That's what my students said. You're woke.
So I resonate with you like crazy. What other kind of people? What kind of people in general resonate with you the most?
You know what? I think it's more of a psychographic than a demographic. But I have noticed when it comes to demographics, a lot of people doing social justice work, a lot of people of color who have been like, I'm being called to do this work, but also at the same time, how do I go about doing this work? Women who feel disempowered by the process or by the structures that they're a part of. People who've gone through 20 years of school and they come out of it saying, I learned a few things. And one of the big things was I was indoctrinated into social compliance. And that's why a lot of people at 30 and 40 will suddenly feel like they've turned into a misfit toy because they did everything they were told they should do. And they not once thought about, is this right for me? Is this like what Aristotle talks about? Is this eudaimonia? Is this living the good life? So that's demographic aside, the psychographic can be anybody. You, me, the listener who's kind of going through life, and then all of a sudden they might be listening to this show right now and asking themselves, there's got to be more to fucking life than this. And the thing is, there is. If you ask, there is. The reality is expanding for you. And so as folks are going through that expansion of possibilities, I'm there to disrupt the bad habits. You know, I'm there to show them this wall is not real. You know, these mental barriers are illusionary, you know? And so I love that work. It's not as woo-woo as you think, and it's not as scientific as you think either. I think a lot of it is just sitting there and understanding and listening to somebody's story, and really just creating a space for them to grow, to be in dissonance, to feel whole, to examine their shadow. Even though I'm not a totally dualistic person, I believe in radical non-dualism, but I do believe that there's parts of ourselves that we suppress. Oftentimes they are our most skilled and powerful parts that we suppress because we've been indoctrinated into social compliance, baby. And hey, if I was the machine, I would indoctrinate people to be army ants too. But unfortunately, I'm not the machine. you know? So like,
I'm really glad. Well, I would want you to be the machine if you were not going to indoctrinate us as ants. I
yeah,
was about to say, like,
yeah.
I wish you were the machine, but never mind. Not if you're going to indoctrinate us as ants. Never mind. You're off. You're fired. So, Marc, what kind of rituals and routines help you show up in the world aligned and ready to serve your audience?
That's a good question. Rituals and routines. Rituals and routines are everything. Especially given the fact that when I left, no, when I was fired from my last job, the rituals and routines were created for me. And what I loved about being fired was that here I was experiencing what I thought was absolute freedom. Now I get to create my own job, the job of my dreams. I get to do what fucking Maslow said and actualize and transcend all that stuff. But to really be sharp at what I do, I realize that I have to create a new structure that works for me. Mornings are Mark's time, right? And so when it comes to rituals, the first thing I do is not hit an alarm because my body just wakes up at 7 o'clock when I think it naturally is supposed to wake up, right? I taking a cold shower, right, and then I'll do about 45 minutes of meditation, and that's really cool given the fact that like I come from a place of people pleasing, and like right before I go into the day, it's important for me to know which voice is mine, because oftentimes like I can feel like I'm getting pulled in a million different directions, and when I go with someone else's voice, I turn into a complete people pleaser. That doesn't serve the other person, and in fact that's kind of nasty to be a people pleaser, because I have an agenda and I don't have the balls to actually confront someone and say, well, I think this is what we should do, or this is what's going down. So that has helped a lot with that. It, I'm a big time introvert. I think you know this. I'm a big time introvert, and so to have the morning for myself is a big deal. There's some physical stuff I like doing in the morning as well. Believe it or not, it's kind of cold here in Florida right now, but I go for a swim in the morning, and I do a couple laps, and again, that's just really invigorating. The feeling when you just plunge into the water and you hear nothing except for the bubbles, right? And you feel nothing against your body, and it's just like floating. There's no pressure. There's no heaviness. That's sort of a metaphor for the way that I want to conduct my day, is without the pressure, without the heaviness. And it just reminds me that it is possible to have days like that where I get out of the pool and the pressure and the heaviness is not there. Like kind of like talking to you, like we could talk for fucking hours, right?
We have.
And we literally have talked for hours, but without the, with grace and ease and joy. I used to think that was a bullshit platitude, but I realize now there's no reason to white knuckle it when it comes to life, when it comes to family, when it comes to business, when it comes to relationships. There is no reason to white knuckle it. Doesn't mean that it's not going to get stressful at times, but that's part of the human experience, right? We don't take any of this shit with us wherever we go next. And so floating in that water for a little bit is a nice little reminder that I don't take any of this with me.
All right. So
that helps me with being authentic, just in case you were about to ask that.
Well, actually, no, seriously, how do you stay authentic as you grow? Like you've started the Joy Revolution. You're always like doing new things because you're a powerhouse. Like, how do you stay authentic as you grow, and especially as you bring in help?
Yeah, Sarah, I actually think that the process has been a process of becoming more and more authentic rather than staying authentic. Every single place that I show up, every little thing that you read off as part of my bios, the I ams, right? Those are just part of some aspect of a persona, a mask that I put on, given the context that I'm in. If I'm doing the Golden Mike show, it's a much different character. It's a much different persona. And what I've been doing over the probably the past year has been, what does Mark look like without any of these personas on? And that will oftentimes come up when I'm floating in the water, right? Like, what does it look like when the camera goes off and, the camera goes off, you're not here, I have no personas on, I rip a big fart because no one sees me. And
in the
like
water.
in the water, right? But like, that's the Mark, that's the truer Mark, right? That's the authentic Mark. And so I think the number one, an acknowledgement that before I do anything like going on the news or a TED Talk, there is some sort of mask that's being put on, but also what can I do to leave that mask off as much as possible? Because the mask itself isn't what's dangerous. It's when the person becomes the mask and they think that's the true, authentic self, right? So really a nice exploration on that. I think my writing has become a place of from the personality, not the persona. And what I've realized over the past, again, year or so, is that I'm going back into this curious mode where everything around me, like when I was in a band, everything around me was inspiration, right? I could look at you, I could look at that tat on your wrist there, and I could write something about it. It looks like a little lotus flower, right? And then I'd write something about I'd turn it into some long distance like thing that we're having in between Florida and Costa Rica, right? Like this connection, and I turned it into a song. Or this bottle cap would inspire me to write something about, like, I don't know what that would inspire me to write about. But I was looking at a hose yesterday, and I was looking at the kink of the hose, and I was thinking about how our lives get like kinked up like that,
One of what you're speaking to me is one of the chapters in my book, which is not written,
it will be,
which is that everything is a metaphor. Every single thing that you look at is a metaphor.
Yes. And there's something about, and maybe this can be written about in your book, but there's something about being cool with the persona-less person that you are when nobody else is watching, and what that means for everything turning into a metaphor. Everything is messaging to me at this point, and it becomes a nice little game when I'm going on a walk to figure out, okay, what is the message here? And how can I use this to communicate? Sometimes, how can I communicate some really, really dense, empirically driven concepts that are quite verbose and turn it into like a hose kink? Use the metaphor of a hose kink, because it's all the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
And and then when you can use that metaphor, that's perfect for connections. It's perfect for people getting to know you. The educated Mark that would drop the empirical data, that's just ego and waxing. But I do use the way that people respond to me as a litmus test of my authenticity. There's a scared little boy inside of me, but also at the same time, when I sort of embrace when I fully embrace who I am, which also means embodying the monster that Carl Jung says. When I also embrace the shadow side of myself, there's a lot of good stuff that can come out. And good meaning negative and positive, but by good I mean authentic. There's authentic stuff that can come out, and when it's authentic, I mean, that's why I go to psychographics, not demographics. When it's authentic, a 40-something-year-old with purple hair can connect to somebody all the way across the world who has never lived in Florida or lived the Filipino American life, but they do know what it feels like to maybe feel like an outsider every now and then. Or they do know what it's like to go into a room and say, one of these things is not like the other. It's me. Right? It's like to actually play that game. You know, I think we all do that. And even psychology research goes and says we all think of ourselves as a little bit weird. And so I think in terms of letting that part out of myself rather than suppressing that, other people are free to be like, yeah, I'm weird too. Well, guess what? That's the beginning of a disruption there.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about how you want to march given this new sort of perspective that you have on the world. You don't have to just march in formation, looking at the ass of the person in front of you and following where they go. So, yeah. How's that
Awesome,
cook doing there on that other side?
What do I got back there?
It sounds like a kitchen over there, Mama.
Oh yeah, well, you know, so part of the whole situation of living in Costa Rica is you never know where I'm going to be recording these interviews. Right now, I'm in a public co-working space doing my best to keep the background noise to a minimum and the echo to a minimum. Sometimes I will be in my beautiful jungle home, which is super far away from anything, and all you will hear are the howler monkeys and the macaws. But today it's construction and people.
I love it. I love it.
So tell me about your business right now. How do you reach people organically? And what's working for you in that department?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good question. So the program is called the Joy Revolution, and it's my dream program. It's the program I've always wanted to teach. When I was in higher education, I knew that I would be doing something like this when I had more freedom to talk about what I really wanted to talk about. And basically it starts with this idea that personal growth isn't enough, Sarah. A lot of people are into the personal growth movement so much that they call it like shelf help now, right? Everyone's picking up a new book nowadays. Everybody's reading on optimizing this and doing that and living happily ever after. And it's not enough. It's not enough to me for someone to go out and go through this kind of individualized development. I think what happens is, as a result of increased consciousness, when done right, positive psychology, which brings someone to a more joyful place, that joy, like we talked about at the beginning, can become a pure contagion that could get people to maybe have some civility during the midst of controversy. It can get others to grow and rather think of themselves as being fixed in this one place in time. They can think of themselves as having a growth mindset, right? And not to get too much into like the jargon of positive psychology, but that really is where we start off in the Joy Revolution. At this point, we call it joy theory. We start by teaching joy theory. We talk about trauma even, and we talk about growth from trauma. We talk about growth from happiness. And then we go in, the next phase is that we actually go into, where do you want to go with this? Where do you want to go with this? Some people want to go and turn it into a speaking route. They want to go into a TEDx route. So we actually have hired a TEDx coach, someone who's given multiple TEDx's, and someone who has produced a TEDx show to help with the people whose revolutions want to be led by speaking engagements to do that. We also have someone who is a prolific writer and gets published all the time. So if you want to write your joy revolution, basically the first step of any revolution is you got to make the invisible visible to the rest of us so we can see the tapestry that's been put up and then take that tapestry down. The tapestries that have confined us, the caves that we've lived in that we thought were reality, when the reality was actually leaving the cave.
So how do you fill your program? I mean, I was in it, so you know, and I know how I found you, but how do you fill your program considering you've never in the past run ads?
Yeah, that's a good question. So before that, for about, we're pushing 200 episodes now. I would talk about the Joy Revolution in a live show that I have called the Golden Mic. And to be quite honest, I didn't know what I was doing getting onto the Golden Mic when I first started. I did know that this quiet kid needed to put himself in front of a camera and a microphone to get used to speaking. The second thing is I knew that I wanted to talk about happiness, and I wanted to talk about movement work. And so the more and more I talked about it, the more and more, I guess, my demographic or my psychographic would show up, and we started having regulars on the show. It was like Howard Stern. We had call and responses. We had inside jokes. And coming up to the 200th episode, I never really did that many calls to action except for I'll see you tomorrow. Now, when the Joy Revolution was starting, I then said during the middle of the episodes, by the way, if you guys want your own Golden Mic, if you know what the invisible is that you want to make visible, we're doing a beta, and I want you in. It's going to be X amount, and we filled it.
So it's basically staying consistent with video. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. It's been staying consistent with video. It was a one-person show when I did it, and the next time around it was a two-person show. And in terms of the Joy Revolution, it was two of us, and we did a little bit more media, but the show stayed consistent every time. It was a month out, I'd do a call to action, and even if the person didn't want to sign up, at that point they would go and tell their friends, like, yo, you should join this. And I think that's how you found out, right? Someone had recommended that you might be a good fit for the revolution.
Yeah. I talked to somebody about Facebook ads, and then they said, you need to talk to my friend Marc about his program after she got to know me over the course of our discovery call. And then once I thought you and I were hopping on not you and I, but your team. Your folks. I thought that we were hopping on a call about doing Facebook ads, and it turns out we were hopping on a call about the Joy Revolution, and I had no idea that I was going to be sold to, but I was, and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm in. I want to start a Joy Revolution, or I want to be a part of a Joy Revolution for sure. So
And how was the experience for you? I mean, we do it with even very little prep as to you're going to be writing a chapter or you're going to be giving TEDx's, like. What was it that got you interested in coming on board with the program?
I think for one, I just resonated so much with your mission.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that was a big part of it. I was just like, anytime I really resonate with somebody's mission and I've got the bandwidth for it, I want to be a part of it. But it's also sort of, there's a growth edge for me there of self-promotion. Mm-hmm. And that's been a growth edge for me since I got into online entrepreneurship since 2012 is I'm cool with promoting other people, but promoting myself, that's tough. And that's what my clients deal with too. So I know that that's a growth edge for me and a lot of my clients, not all of them, a lot of them have that down, but, so that was what drew me in, and my experience with the program was awesome. I loved it. It's very, it runs this beautiful line of, I have a background, I've got an undergraduate degree and a master's degree. And so I have an academic history, and I really liked how it was and I have a background in activism as well. None of which I really participate in now, higher education or like political activism. I've just ditched and gone to Costa Rica, but anyway. But anyway, it really, I thought beautifully tied in my more esoteric spirituality parts of myself, my academic parts of myself and the activist parts of myself beautifully, and in a very positive way that kind of brought all that back in a way that felt good.
Yes, that's awesome. And again, like I talk about psychographics over demographics, like who the program resonates with, it resonates with. I mean, we had people who were dealing with death. We had people who had special needs kids. We had shaman. Sometimes he'd show up drunk and with a cigarette in his hand, the coolest shaman you'll ever meet. We had yogis up in the class. And the thing was that it became this very powerful incubator for whatever it is that you're doing. What would it be like to add some joy theory to it? And I remember you went and cut a video on Corey Keyes's model of what it means to flourish, what it means to settle, what it means to strive. Even though I'm not teaching it right now, everyone can maybe think about a time in your life when you've settled for a person or a thing or a place, or a time in your life when you were overdoing it and white knuckling it and striving for things that weren't your own shit, like it was someone else's expectation of you. And I remember, Sarah, when you went and you turned it into a video to show how this works for advertising in the marketing space, like how flourishing is really where I want to take and I'm paraphrasing, is really where I want to take my clients. And some of them may be settling, some of them may be striving, but all of them want to go to a place of joy. And it was like, oh my goodness, proof of concept, like to see a marketer, to see a marketer go and drop this, and then if you wanted to, at any point, if you wanted to bring back the sort of the work that you've done in social justice and movement work, it can easily transition over without that much difficulty. You just take the stuff we're teaching and it translates over, and so that's what I love about the joy theory that we teach. It's really taught on a meta level, and you've got now we're expanding to 4 coaches. So the fact that there's 4 coaches there to really sit down with people and be like, okay, shaman, what are we doing with your joy revolution?
Wow, so you're doubling. It was 2 coaches, brilliant coaches when I was there, and now it's 4. It's awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
And one of them is a strategist who can help you with building out if you want to build out your revolution. And by the way, one of the things that we talk about is this mindset around when people do revolutions, they often will think that, oh, I'm giving of myself to the revolution and I must not expect anything in return. No, if you're going to do revolution work, get paid. Get paid. So
because you need to be able to have the spaciousness to continue to do the work. And if you're not getting paid, that means you've got to go get a job too. And you don't have that spaciousness to be able to do the work.
Absolutely.
And you're in constant white knuckling mode.
Absolutely. I mean, Mother Teresa and Gandhi had a team, and if they were still around, they'd probably have a social marketing team.
They would. I mean, a lot of the spiritual figures of today have a marketing team, and I'm on several of those marketing teams. Hell yeah!
You just did an elbow drop, you guys. You gotta watch the YouTube show where she does the elbow drop, shows her guns off for a little bit. But I think that's. Yeah. I think that whether it's 100% for profit or whether it's this sort of hybrid model that people are doing, social media for social good. I think that's where I'm going right now. It's using social media for social good is an absolute avenue that must be looked at.
Transforming the world with Facebook and Instagram, man.
Absolutely.
This is my speech. I've given it 1 million times, but there's 7 billion people on the planet. 2 billion of them are on Facebook and Instagram. That's 3 times as what you need for a critical mass and a tipping point.
Yeah.
Let's reach them. Let's reach these people.
Absolutely. And I mean, even before we got on this, I think it's really, brilliant that the day is turning out the way that it did. So I've got a meeting that I came from on the Joy Revolution, which relaunches on the 22nd. And the first thing that we talked about were Facebook ads. And so maybe I need to meet with you privately after this, but like we talked about the idea of, if we really want to be serious about scaling this revolution, it's no longer 1980 where we go and put flyers up everywhere and chalk the ground, which is cool. But like, if we really want to be a serious revolution, which we are, we've got to invest a little bit in terms of getting it to the psychographics and demographics who will completely light up when they see this. I know that there's some people out there that are searching for this in 2020, and it's my responsibility to let them know that there's something out there for them. They don't have to feel lonely anymore. They don't have to feel like they're piecemealing things anymore. It's been done for them, and now they can take this course, and just like the grace, ease, and joy of jumping into a pool and just feeling yourself weightless, like it's like that, or that's what we're hoping. But yeah, that's why we're moving, and that's where we're moving in 2020.
Yeah, so I mean, that brings me to my next question of what's the next level and how do you plan to reach and impact more people? And I think you just answered it, but if there's anything left unsaid for how you're going to take it to the next level in 2020, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I mean, you can only write so many books, right? You can only give so many TEDx's, but to really, and which will happen. It's a book, and I'm just going to call it here. It's the first time in public I'm going to say it.
Yes.
I'm going to be in a one-man, or I'm writing a one-man show right now. Right? Like,
beautiful.
Screw TED Talks, baby. And I mean, I love TED Talks, but like, I need more than 15 minutes to talk about joy and pain, to talk about freedom and addiction.
I hope you're going to have costume changes.
Oh, it's all nude. It's really experimental, right?
It's just the pink hair. That's it.
It's just the pink hair. No, if I do it, of course I'm gonna have to do some costume changes. You know me, Ma. I'm gonna go big. But also at the same time, even with that, we're gonna have to have some social media presence around that. And I'm really gonna need to make sure that whether it's the one-person show that's talking about a joy revolution, or the program Joy Revolution, or whether it's the Golden Mic, I've got to cut through a lot of noise. And I'm not saying that everything around me is noise and everything around, and I'm perfection, right? What I'm saying is there's a message that I have, and there's a receiver on the other end that can't get the message because there's so much crap in between.
There are many receivers, many.
Sure. There's many receivers. Let's do it. But there's a lot of things that get in the way of those receivers. For example, jobs. The fact that a lot of people, they're doing their own thing. And to create something that is aligned with what I do in the morning when I'm taking my walks and I'm quiet, Mark, that still shows up, but shows up on a Facebook ad, and it's still me, it's still the genuine me, I think it's going to cut through a lot of stuff, but I also acknowledge that I can't do it by myself. That's, that's the part of acknowledging your hui, your group. Who are the people in your neighborhood who can actually get you to that next level,
and
right?
who can represent you in a way that feels good and aligned.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the growth piece for me over the past year is that when the Joy Revolution, or 2 years, is when the Joy Revolution started, I was very much about holding on to my brand, holding on to my message, holding on to my this, holding on to my that. And part of it was because I had it all in here, in my head and in my heart and in my gut. But if I can get it on a piece of paper, if I can get it on a podcast, then it means that another person can join me, and another person can join me in terms of getting the message out. It's not, there's a lot of people who who think that, starting off, they have to do it themselves. And finding the right person to work with you on your message or who get your message is a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's a big deal, and I'm not looking for $1 billion, multi-million, but like, I'm not looking for $1 billion.
Like, don't limit yourself, Mark.
I'm not looking for $1 billion thing here, but I also still always want to be the guy that teaches the class. That's what lights me up. That's what lights me up. And Sarah, you knew it. You knew it when you came in 8 o'clock on a Wednesday or Thursday, whenever we met. You'd lie on the floor. You were exhausted,
Couch.
But still, okay. Your kid was there sometimes, but like still, that would light me up. That would light me up. Now, how do we get people in? Yeah, we got to talk about social media. Facebook ads. I have to show up consistently as myself or as real as I can on the golden mic. And I don't need to be burning myself out on it either. Like, it's gotten to the point where it's easy to do the golden mic. It doesn't take 3 hours of prep.
So how can people find you so that they can see the golden mic and anything else you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook. I'm the redheaded Asian. Marc Cordon, Cordon. It's MARC, Cordon on Facebook. Or if you go to the joyrevolution.com, we've got something really cool up there. If you click in the know, actually we have the class that Sarah was in, where we taught Corey Keyes' model of flourishing, languishing, and striving.
I loved that class. That's why I was so inspired to make my own video.
Yeah, and so you can watch what Sarah watched and either make your own video. Maybe it feels like a good fit for you, or really use, and this is what I want, use that concept that Corey Keyes developed for your own personal growth and to really introduce it to communities that don't think that they have anything except for sitting on an island psychologically or emotionally being a misfit toy. Doesn't need to be like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be like that. So if you go to joyrevolution.com, you can totally check out the class there, and we'll leave it on as long as the podcast is up. So what, 30 years? We'll leave it up there?
For sure. Okay, last question for you.
Yeah.
How do you maintain your focus and alignment so that you're not spreading yourself too thin, missing out on what matters most, which is, I would say, your own self-care, your own personal growth, your own spirituality?
Mm-hmm. I think those mornings that I have claimed only for myself are a big deal. Not to be super downer, but my pops is on the decline right now, and to really make sure that I'm spending some time with him. I've got a kid that I get to see every few days. That's amazing. And I've got 2 nephews who are brilliant. They're 6 years old. No, they're not 6 years old. That's my son. They're 2 years old going on 90. My son's brilliant too. But really spending time with them and shutting off the phone. Really going analog with it, baby. And then I think one of the things that I've noticed or that I've realized from the last time we actually sat down and were sat across from each other, how powerful it is to unplug and just connect with the humans around us. It's one thing for you to have been in my program. It's another thing for us to have sat down, shared a meal, and really connected about like what the hell and who the hell we stand for and who the hell we are. And that's something that's really important to me. And it's not about going out with every single person that has been a part of my program, but really connecting with the ones that I know that I would connect with. Yeah. And I just did that this weekend. I did that with a few friends in New York, and I'll continue to do that. So I think that, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marc. This was such a pleasure. It was a joy.
Thank you, Rolling Stone.
All right. Thanks, y'all, for listening. I'll see you next week.